Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Brooks Mitchell. This is Kelly and LeConte. We are part of
Hello.
Space Science Institute, the StarNet project. So today we are going to be talking about PLA's Project Outcome Tool. We're excited to be joined by Emily Plowman of PLA. But we're just going to give another 1 or 2 minutes to let people kind of trickle in. And in the meantime, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat box, I know most of you have done that already. And also, if for some reason you want to download the slides to follow along, the that middle pod is the PDF download of those slides. You need to do that. Jeffrey, I have not. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sending me those files, that would be great. Jeffrey, I think you invited me to the teleconference. I was recovering from surgery. I wanted to make it, but when the day come, I was kind of out of it, so I wasn't able to make those. Hello, Brooke. Brooke, I see that you've raised your hand. I'm not totally sure. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll approve that. I don't know what that means when you raise your hand, but hey, Kelly. Sorry, I had to clear out the chat history earlier when you introduced yourself. So thanks for introducing yourself again. Thanks for all of you that attended the webinar yesterday and today. Thank you for pulling double duty with us this week. Ah, hello, Kara. Hosting STEM projects for middle school aged kids. Ah, that's a tough audience to reach. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let's see. We got a lot of pods up here. And so just to introduce ourselves again, my name is Brooks. This is Kellyan, and we are here in Boulder, Colorado. And we're just going to introduce our guest presenter today and talk about a few resources that we have available. So let's see. First and foremost, this webinar will be recorded. We'll get it uploaded to our YouTube page. So if you had a colleague that couldn't attend, when I send out an email after this, you can pass along that YouTube recording. There will be a certificate of attendance. We'll put that into the chat box momentarily. And if for some reason you don't get to grab that link, you can just send me an email afterwards and I'll get that sent to you. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to do some, just brief introductions. We're going to do a project outcome overview. Emily's going to be taking that on. And then afterwards, we're going to kind of have a little bit of a discussion just in terms of project outcome and some of the STEM measurements. All right, and of course, we want to thank our funders, the National Science Foundation. They help us put on these webinars and help us kind of run our StarNet online community. If you haven't joined StarNet, please do. It is a great online community full of professional development resources that are all free to you guys, librarians. They include webinars. You know, we make our announcements here for upcoming webinars. We put out a newsletter about once a month, blogs, forums, videos, and much more. So it is definitely a resource, a free resource that is worth checking out if you have not already. And part of that StarNet online community would be the STEM Activity Clearinghouse. It is easily sortable activities designed for librarians that want to do STEM. So no matter your budget, no matter the time that you have or how comfortable you feel facilitating an activity, the STEM Activity Clearinghouse is a great place to go. And there's about 150 activities on there right now. If you do go do an activity from the STEM Activity Clearinghouse, please leave a review so that we can let other library staff know, what worked, what didn't work, what age groups was this activity appropriate for. So it's just a great online community to kind of get feedback. And upcoming webinars, the next one's going to be March 6th, Celebrate 60 Years of Earth Observations with NASA. That is a Earth Day tie-in. And if you want to see old webinars, you can follow that link. That's where we archive all of our webinar recordings. And also we have a YouTube channel where they all get uploaded as well. And if for some reason you missed these links, you need to get them after the webinar, just email me. I'll be happy to send them to you. All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce Emily Plowman. is the Manager of Impact and Advocacy at PLA. She will not be on webcam. We'll just have this image up there, and she'll be talking for about 30, 40 minutes just about project outcome and ways that you can utilize it in your library. And we look forward to getting a lot of feedback from you guys too. So please be active in the chat box. Throw in your ideas, throw in your suggestions, and we look forward to hearing that. So Emily, you want to go ahead and come on the mic?
Sure. And thank you for the introduction, Brooks. Let's see, I'm going to click over.
Yeah, you can just drag your slides over, or I can do it for you.
Okay. Can you do it for me, please, Brooks?
Certainly. And then do you see the arrows on the bottom to
Yep.
adjust? Okay, great.
Yeah, great. Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you, StarNet, for hosting this webinar. As Brooke shared, I'm Emily Plowman. I'm the Manager of Impact and Advocacy for the Public Library Association. And I am personally interested in talking to libraries that do STEM type programming because I met Kellyanne a number of years ago at the Association for Rural and Small Libraries Conference and had a chance to sit in on her presentation where she was just talking about programming that libraries could do that was STEM focused, and it was simple and easy and free. And I really saw an opportunity for libraries that do this kind of programming to also do outcome-based evaluation, especially when you're trying to convey there's such a learning goal associated with this type of programming. Outcome measurement is a great way to capture what that value add is to this type of programming. And once you start going through the process of capturing the outcomes of this work, you have a lot of really good data that you can go back to your funders or your community and talk about the value of the STEM programming that you offer. So I'm just going to breeze through some of the early slides, introduction slides here, and I'm really interested to learn from those of you on the call today, how many of you are learning about Project Outcome for the first time? And if you could actually click on the poll, yes, no, or no vote. So is this your first time learning about Project Outcome? Okay, looks like we're a little bit about half and half, maybe. All right, we're getting the numbers creep up a little bit more. 60% or so are saying yes, this is your first time learning about Project Outcome. Great, welcome. And for those of you who this Project Outcome isn't new to you, feel free to share in chat if you've signed up for Project Outcome before or where else you might have heard about us. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Looks like the results are about 75% learning about Project Outcome for the first time, 25% having heard about Project Outcome. So Project Outcome at a very high level is a free toolkit designed to help public libraries understand and share the impact of their programs and services by providing simple surveys and an easy to use process for measuring and analyzing outcomes. Project Outcome also provides libraries with resources and training support needed to apply their results and confidently advocate for their library's future. This slide is a little bit outdated. We have a live feed on our website that gives us numbers, and we're over 110,000 patron surveys collected in our system with over 900 libraries participating in our system as well. And it looks like we might have a couple of you who don't directly work in a public library. Some of elements of the toolkit are specifically available to public libraries only, but a lot of the information that we make available and the resources that we make available are free, and anyone, library or not, can access them by creating an account online. And you'll see Samantha Lopez, our fearless project coordinator for Project Outcome, has posted the link in the chat, www.projectoutcome.org. And if I don't communicate clearly enough today that access to the resources for everybody and the toolkit, the survey management tool, and our data dashboards for public libraries are free. If you walk away wondering if there's a cost, I have not done a great job presenting. So everything I'm talking about is free and accessible once you create an account. So why measure outcomes? Why are we talking about the value of measuring outcomes? A lot of this is going to feel real familiar. The amount of data that maybe you provided in the past doesn't go as far as it used to. Output data, such as an attendance count or um, just circulation counts, don't go as far as they used to. And so libraries need more to talk about, more data to talk about value. And what we're really focusing on today is outcomes as a value, a data value point. You'll see here on this slide that there are a lot of different other types of measurement you can be doing when you're talking about library value. There's needs assessment, where you're going out to the whole community and you're saying, what does our community need? What can the library do to help better meet that need? There's patron satisfaction, where you're actually talking to the patrons and you're saying, as a whole, what can the library do to improve your satisfaction of what the library offers? Outputs are data points that you probably collect and report on regularly. These are the collection numbers. These are reference numbers. These are the head counts that you're reporting on. But outcomes really focus on that question, what good did we do when we presented a program to a patron, when we offered a service to a patron, and they were able to take that information and make a change. So you're measuring from the patron perspective the good that the library did. So for STEM specific programming, you would be handing out a survey at the end of some kind of STEM program and saying, what are you going to do, patron, with what you learned? Did we successfully, you're measuring, did we successfully pass on a learning to you that you can use? So the way that we, PLA and Project Outcome, define an outcome is, again, that benefit from the patron perspective. And we help you measure outcomes in both quantitative and qualitative ways. And again, we're really focused on that change that the individual perceives. So it's all patron reporting that you're working to collect. But again, you're not trying to predict what the patron will say. You're asking them, what good did we do? And the different types of outcomes we measure are listed here. I'll walk through what the surveys are that we make available and the different types of templates that we have that you can access. But the outcomes that we really focus on are listed as knowledge, skills, attitudes, opinions, behaviors, actions, and status. So you're capturing what kind of change, effect, or impact those programs are having on those outcomes. So you would have read the summary. You're here today because you have some interest in outcome measurement, not necessarily STEM specific. I'd be interested to hear in the chat, is there a problem that you're trying to solve, and how can measuring outcomes help you solve that problem? And again, it doesn't have to be STEM specific. If it is, that's great. But just at a really high level, is there some kind of measurement need that you have because you're trying to address a problem? And go ahead and type that in the chat. I see
Emily,
we're having a...
yeah, I just went over to the larger chat box. Let me pull up the slides again, sorry.
Great. And as everyone's typing in the chat, I can just kind of respond to some of what I'm seeing. Jeffrey shared that this really hits home for all informal educators. What good do educators do outside of a classroom? Yes, exactly. Librarians are out there and they're conveying information that's designed to support their community. And I think what libraries are really facing right now is this, they're receiving questions from their community that are saying, or that are focused on, what is the value of keeping the library open? Your numbers are going down. We don't, books are online. Why are we continuing to keep the doors open in the hours that they are? And if you're an informal educator, you know that patrons are coming in and they're looking to the library for help. And this is a great way, outcomes are a great way to kind of capture that besides just having one person or 5 people come in. So I see a few more people typing. Jeffrey's asking, how can we track long-term outcomes? That's great. I'll touch on that a little bit in a few slides. And Kelly says that her library is constantly evaluating. So this is one other type of evaluation that you could be doing. So certainly, as I'm talking, if you're thinking of any other types of problems you might be trying to solve or support libraries trying to solve, continue to feel free to populate that information in the chat. So I'm going to touch really briefly on the toolkit. I'll highlight the elements that are available to all libraries, and then when we have the pieces that are specifically available to public libraries, I'll note that. But the background of Project Outcome is that the toolkit sits on the set of outcomes that I have highlighted for you in previous slides. And those outcomes were developed and tested by the Public Library Association's Performance Measurement Task Force. So we had a group of researchers, state librarians, and public librarians come together and try and find ways that we could offer a standardized set of outcomes that could be available to the field that would meet kind of a broad brush of needs and be not only available but also free, so that libraries could really easily measure outcomes without having to have a bunch of barriers around measurement or drafting their own outcomes. So they wanted to make it really easy for libraries to be able to take the outcomes and measure with them without having to do a lot of their own upfront work to get started. The Project Outcome platform is funded with a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant. And it's, again, all free for libraries. Public and state libraries have free access to the survey tool and the data dashboards. The toolkit itself has the surveys that we're talking about, the survey tool, data dashboards, and then a lot of resources and training available to anybody wanting to measure outcomes. We have free online webinars once a month. Well, actually this year it'll be quarterly, and I'll share information about the next one at the end of today's presentation. So we have a set of 7 survey topic areas that we have surveys that we have surveys available for. Early childhood literacy, education and lifelong learning, digital learning, civic and community engagement, summer reading, job skills, and economic development. And Jeffrey asked a great question in chat. How can we integrate evaluation into our job when we're already so busy? And I'll talk about how the toolkit is designed to make it easy for you to measure. But we also know that once libraries start measuring, they find ways to be more efficient in their jobs, so that they're finding ways to trade off work that they're currently doing with some kind of survey activity, because they're able to be more efficient in how they run their programs or make decisions about their programs. We also know libraries sometimes rely on volunteers to help with this. So the survey questions that we ask, again, focus on the outcomes that you see here: knowledge, confidence, behavior change, and awareness. And then we also have qualitative data that we help you measure. What did patrons like most, and what can the library do to improve? The surveys are all ready to go for you. They're all set up in the system already. Again, this is designed to help you reduce the time barrier to doing any kind of outcome evaluation using our toolkit. And the immediate survey is actually super short. And if you want to just spend a couple of minutes to go online and get an account set up, you can have a survey printed off and ready to go to hand out at the end of the program in just a couple of minutes. So the immediate survey is a set of 6 questions across all 7 topics, and they're really quick and easy for patrons to fill out. They ask the 4 standardized outcome questions of knowledge, confidence, behavior change, and awareness of resources on a scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. And then the 2 open-ended questions: what did you like most, and what could the library do to improve? They take about 5 minutes to hand out, and they're our most commonly used survey. Here's a snapshot of what it looks like. You can, I'll talk about customization opportunities, but again, these are really quick and easy to print off and hand out. You hand them out right at the end of the survey, and you just capture that immediate learning. Now, Jeffrey, you had asked questions about longer term evaluation, and the follow-up surveys that we make available are also standardized, but they're not the same format across all survey topics. They ask yes or no questions, and all the questions are focused on what did you do as a result of attending a program or service. So it gets at that actual um, action taken. So you left the library with having learned something, and how did you apply that learning? And you can hand these out in a short period of time, 4 to 8 weeks. If you're looking at even longer term evaluation, we have other resources available through our outcome measurement guidelines that I'll talk about in a second that can help you think through that. So again, here's a picture of that survey, still pretty short, not necessarily just one page like we have the immediate surveys. And they take a little bit more time to administer. So you're capturing people's emails and you're handing follow-up surveys out after a period of time has passed versus just being able to hand a survey out right at the conclusion of a program or service. Again, immediate surveys capture that reflection of what someone has immediately learned, and the follow-up surveys try to get at that reported adoption. And then we have guidelines that are available for libraries that need to do something that's way more complex than just handing out surveys. So these are, if you have a partner, you need to write your own outcomes, you have some kind of intent to partner. We have the guidelines up online, and we're actually going to be talking about the collaborative partnership guideline on our January 31st webinar. Again, we'll send links to that in the chat and talk a little bit more about it at the end of today's presentation. Here's a snapshot again of the website, www.projectoutcome.org. And once you log on, it's really easy to access. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the resources, peer discussion, and events. Those are available to anybody who registers. Survey management tool and data dashboards on the left-hand side of the screen are what are available to public libraries. So our survey management tool is specific, again, to public libraries. But you can go in and you can set up a template around the survey questions. One of the things that we hear a lot of feedback on from libraries that run STEM programming is that they want to have a STEM specific question in the survey topics. So you actually can go ahead and add additional questions of your own, up to 3. I'll talk through those a little bit when we're going through the STEM specific discussion portion of today's webinar. But you have the ability to do some customization so that you can be more focused on STEM programming. So you can add a program name, you can put intro and footer messages where you talk about the program goals, and again, you can add questions of your own. And then we have data dashboards that are designed to help you do all of the data analysis in a template. So we have a customized report builder. Once you enter the data into the system, it all populates there for you. You can break it down in all different types of ways and have a report ready to go in 5 minutes. They're really easy to develop and then pull off of the website and great for board reports. And then we have data dashboards that help you with data analysis. So again, once you put the data into the system, it all stores there. We do have state and national averages incorporated into our data dashboards, so you can see how you're doing relative to those within your state and at the national level. And then the training resources, again, available to everybody, has everything from getting started to what the field has done to take action using outcome data. And what we've learned from libraries, and that's where I'm going to transition to next, is that, oh, and we have a peer discussion board, excuse me, where you can go on and you can reach out to your peers and ask questions about how they're measuring outcomes. So what's been really powerful is that we have a lot of really good information now about how libraries are using outcome data, having collected it and reported on it through the Project Outcome Toolkit. And we don't require that you get a minimum number of responses collected in the system. We have some libraries that are super small that might just get a couple of responses collected in surveys, but the data that they get is great when they go and they talk to the board and they talk about the value of a storytime program. The kids come in, they say that they love the program, they say they want the library to continue to offer the program, and that's some really great advocacy talking points for the library when they go and they present their budget or their board is asking about library value. Again, using project outcome, using the toolkit and the survey management tools, you can capture all your data in one location. It's really designed to help reduce the burden for you on actually aggregating the data. You're still handing out a survey and you're still reporting data into a system, but all of the work is done for you. The results are available immediately. You have the data visualizations and the ready to go reports that you don't have to go through the process of pulling those numbers yourself. And then you have the standardized outcome measures. So you get this great set of data that's aggregated across your library up to the national level, and it's across a variety of programs. So I'm just going to touch really quickly on a couple of examples of what libraries have done in the field using outcome data, and then I'm going to turn it over to the STEM specific aspect and kind of start trying to have more of a discussion around what you want to measure in the STEM field and how we could make sure that we're providing more support for you. So the easiest way that libraries can make changes based on the outcome data they collect is to make program improvements. And sometimes the program improvements are as simple as having the pitch be higher for little kids during story time singing. Sometimes it's just improving marketing by creating a flyer and making information more available about programming that's coming up in the library. Here you'll see a great example where the Tulsa City County Library used Project Outcome to also make programming decisions, and they measured their storytime programs across several branches. Only one of the branches had designated playtime and toys for after story time. So to share their results, the library created an infographic that highlighted trends in the open-ended comments that they collected through the Project Outcome surveys. And the results show that patrons really liked and referenced that post-storytime toys and playtime almost as much as the program itself. So as a result, the library is able to use its Friends of the Library group to fund toys for other branches so they could provide the same post-storytime activities. If you're thinking about a science program that you're offering, maybe you pilot it in one library branch, you run outcome measurement on it, and you can use the information you get back to either ask for more funding or make improvements to that particular program so that you can eventually expand it. That's a great way to think about starting measuring outcomes. You can use outcome measurement to address funding needs. So the Cleveland Heights University Public Library used Project Outcome to apply for a Dollar General Summer Reading Club grant to support their early readers program. By using Project Outcome and the Summer Reading Caregiver Survey as their evaluation method, the library is able to set quantitative targets in their application. As a result, the library was awarded the $3,000 grant they applied for, and their early readers' results exceeded their initial grant goals. So 85% of the survey respondents reported that their child maintained or increased their reading skills. 76% reported their child is a more confident reader. 80% reported their child reads more often, and 74% reported their child uses the library more often. So great way to go and apply for funding. The Snow Isle Library System in Washington State, looked closely at their strategic plan to identify areas of strategic focus, shown on the left, and then identify tactics in their planning of programs and services to measure and improve those areas. Project Outcome is just one of several tools they are using to focus on these key strategic areas. For Snow Isle, their areas of strategic focus are in early literacy, digital skills, economic development, and civic engagement. All of these areas are covered by Project Outcome surveys. Snow Isle administration has placed a strong emphasis on data-driven change, and outcome measurement is an important part of that data set. Thank you. Apologize for that. I realize I skipped slides. That's the Snow Isle. give you a second to scan that. So you can use outcome measurement to measure against strategic planning needs. Um, you can use outcome measurement for communication and advocacy purposes. So Atlanta Fulton Public Library widely shared their summer reading survey results with their friends groups, library board, and to the businesses that donated summer reading prizes. They shared photos of the kids thanking the businesses, which the businesses really valued and shared via social media. Because of this, the library anticipates doubling their local business prize donations next summer. One parent's comment even made it into the library's foundation newsletter, which goes out to all of its donors. And then lastly, you can use outcome data for creating partnerships. So workforce, for example, workforce development and small business creation and growth is a high priority for Pima County, Arizona. In the library's quarterly updates to the county, as well as their recent annual report, they included evidence of outcomes and anecdotes provided through project outcome surveys. As a result, when the Pima County One-Stop Career Center asked the county for more money, instead the county administrator suggested they partner with the library, who was already doing great work in this area before giving them any funding. What resulted was a new collaborative effort between the Career Center and the library to provide youth with work experience as well as college and career readiness programming. Career Center youth participated in Teen 365 programming at the library, which helps teens develop skills, connections, and opportunities to create a successful and happy adulthood. The year-round program addresses all aspects of teen development, from academic goals to social and personal interests, and combined with the Career Center's efforts to provide employability skills training, helps create pathways to college, career, and entrepreneurship. Yes, it's great. These are great stories. I love them. And we have these examples in greater detail and more examples from the field on our Project Outcome website, www.projectoutcome.org. So I've given you a really high level of what Project Outcome is as quickly as I could. Thank you for your patience as I go through that. And now I really want to focus on the STEM piece of this. I can think of a lot of different great examples of different types of STEM programming that could benefit from outcome measurement. But I'd love to hear from you in chat what kind of STEM programming you might be able to measure using outcome measurement. And I'll give you all a few seconds to go ahead and type that in the chat. Lego Mindstorm's Robotics Club. That sounds like so much fun. I think, Julian, I want to sign up for that program for sure. Yes, definitely. Any learning goal that you would have with that is a great way to measure outcomes. Code Girls. Kelly, yes, that's awesome. I'll talk a little bit about what other libraries are doing in the system, but coding is definitely something we see libraries using our project outcome surveys to measure. Lori asked if we were working on another grant like NASA at my library and they have a specific survey already, could we use Project Outcome to input those answers into your system so we have access to the dashboard? If they align with the outcomes and the questions match closely or match exactly, yes, you should be able to do that, Lori. And certainly feel free to ask me if you have questions on how to do that. Just shoot me an email. I have my contact information in the slides. Kara shares all of it, considering this is my first time. I need to know what they liked and didn't like. Yes. Ours did one last year, and Lego Challenge was a huge hit. Perfect. When you select a report location, when building a report, can you select other? Kareen, let me come back to that if we have time at the end. When the report builder is pretty flexible, you can set up other locations in your account. So if you have a bookmobile or you're doing something offsite, you set that up in the account and that will populate in the report builder. I think that answers your question, but feel free to clarify. So continue to feel free to type in chat. Definitely want to continue to hear your ideas. And Samantha also clarified your question, Kareen. But one of the things that we hear pretty frequently is that of those libraries that have STEM or STEAM specific activities, they aren't necessarily sure if our questions meet some of their outcome measurement needs. And so that's also part of what we wanted to have today's webinar about, because one, we want to make sure that you are aware of how STEM activity is currently being measured. And two, we do have a committee. Our task force is converting from a um, time-bound task force to a full committee at midwinter, and they're going to be reviewing ongoing feedback that we get from the field about how we can make improvements in the system, especially when it comes to the outcomes that we measure. So right now what we see is that we have about 5% of all of our programs in our system that have some STEM type activity clearly identified in the title. So I went through all of the program names and looked at anything that had STEM, coding, engineering, math in the title, and those total types of programs runs at about 5% of all the programs we see in our system. Now, that doesn't mean that that adequately represents all of our STEM programs. This is just my analysis of what I can see. Some libraries might choose to be calling a how to use a computer a STEM program. That might be something that they would consider STEM. But I didn't want to go too far outside of the bounds of what I considered really traditional STEM type work. So typically what we see when we have a clearly identified STEM or STEAM program is that they're measuring a kit. We have a really great example out of Plano, Texas, where they check out STEM kits. They put our surveys in those kits. The kits came back, and they found out that the libraries, there were patrons that didn't know the library is offering any kind of programming. And they were surprised by that because the library offers a lot of different types of programming. So they put marketing flyers in the STEM kits, checked those kits out with marketing flyers, and I think it's 80 to 90% of those kits came back without those marketing flyers that had program information on it. So STEM kits are a great way to do outcome measurement. We see libraries measuring any kind of robot classes, tech classes like coding, engineering classes, and especially maker spaces. And most commonly, when we see a library coming into the system and has identified a STEM activity that they're measuring, they're using our Education and Lifelong Learning Survey. This is the broadest survey that we have. The language is pretty generic. And so the way that you can make it more STEM specific is by titling it with the program name so it's very clear what the program is you're measuring, and then putting goal information in the header part of our template so that it's clear what it is that the objectives are of that program that you're measuring. But you'll see here we're really asking at a very high level if the patrons are learning something, they feel more confident about what they just learned, they intend to apply what they learned, they are more aware of applicable resources and services, and then again, what did you like most and what could the library do to better assist you in learning more? So this is really the catch-all for a lot of programs. We see a lot of cuisine type programs pick up under this topic, STEM obviously, language programs as well. So it's a pretty generic survey, but tends to be a good fit for really it's a good broad topic that has a lot of subtopics that fit underneath it. And we do have 2 STEM specific additional questions that you can add on to the template that I've put on here, and I want you to just take a minute and look at this. I'm going to ask for your feedback on this in a few slides. But the question asks, or as a result of this program, I am, and it's a select all apply checkbox option, using science more often, trying new technology, seeking new science experiences, exploring STEM careers, and contributing to other science programs. They also have the option to check other and fill in the blank, or answer not applicable. And then we have the same set of options for the immediate survey, which is you intend to. So as a result of this program, you intend to, and then the same set of options. So you can go in and use any survey topic you want and then add on this STEM specific question if you want. But we also know that libraries are going in and writing their own questions. So the most commonly asked write your own questions that are STEM or STEAM specific are what other types of topics would you like to see? How did you use this kit? And what would you like to learn next? And these aren't necessarily, these aren't outcome questions. These are more satisfaction or needs assessment type questions. It's okay that they be asked, but the outcome questions are really getting to that action, the result, what happens because you learned something, and these really focus on what do you want next? How did you use the kit? So now we're going to open it up for chat, and I'm going to catch up to what we've seen come through the chat. But what kind of outcome questions would you also want to ask in a STEM specific project or activity? I'll go back to the other slide and pull up what the current additional questions option is. But if you're thinking about measuring outcomes of a science program or an engineering program, what specific outcomes are you looking to measure? If we tried to refine a question or we wanted to look at potentially adding a new question for you, how could we better ask that, or how could we offer that to you in a way that would really get at what some of your learning goals are? And maybe you don't have any specific outcomes in mind, but if you have a couple of um, um, like learning objectives that you want to identify that you have with some of your STEM programs, certainly feel free to share those as well. So are you looking to trying to identify any outcomes? And I've just put up here as an example, outcomes that would be related to engagement with others, like study buddies, adults, or mentors. Are there any specific skills-based outcomes that are being taught that you'd like to capture? Or use-based outcomes. Are you going to school and applying this in school? And I'm going to go back to the current questions that we make available. So there's you intend to and I am. It's the same set of options. And I can see some folks typing. Go ahead and share in the chat. Kara shared it would be nice to know what was and wasn't documented besides the Lego. If you can share a little bit more about that in the chat, that would be helpful. Kellyanne shared, us STEM people always wonder what everyone calls what we do. It seems hard to capture quickly. That's a good comment. Anyone have any feedback to share on that? Brooke shared, is better understanding the scientific method a learning objective for libraries? Interesting. So that's kind of a broad brush at maybe everything under STEM, I think. Jeffrey shared, I'm a bit confused by use science more often. Can you elaborate what that means? So I think the intent here was if there was some kind of I'm trying to think of a good example, like a bubble blowing class, or maybe how to use a 3D, well, trying new technology would be 3D printer, but I think the idea was, as a result of the program, I'm using science more often, was trying to get at whatever scientific concept was captured in that program. Does it inspire them to go out and use what they learned, or to re-engage with other types of science-based activities? So I think it was trying to capture both new and new science activity and what they would have learned in that class. Perhaps something about worthy instructions to follow, or something about scientific vocabulary and ease of learning. Interesting. Um, Lori, I'd be interested to hear if in the programming that you're aware of, is that something, that's a great way to think about how you could make a programming improvement. Is that something you have found or learned, is something you've wanted to fix or work on based off of other evaluation that you've done? Uh, Lori also shared, as a result of the program, I am more confident in my science literacy. So science literacy, it sounds like you see science literacy or maybe methods is different than, um, distinctly different than using science, correct? Brooke shared, Lori, that's a great idea. I think getting a good grasp of what the average library user knows in terms of scientific vocabulary could be really helpful for library staff across the country. Knowing there is no such thing as an average library user, correct? Yeah. Um, are there concepts that you think are starting to become more commonly adopted by libraries across the US that maybe you're testing now through the STAR network, um, StarNet network, that maybe aren't displayed up here? I think we wanted again to keep it really broad so that these answers could be applied across many different types of programs. Um, I know when we were talking about this originally, the citizen science programs question was one that, we don't necessarily have a sense of um, the activity related to what citizen science, like how many citizen science programs are actually going on. But we were also developing this around the time that the solar eclipse was happening. So there was, I think, a lot of interest in citizen science programs at that time. Lori shared concerns from the community about why not many seem interested in STEM programs. They do not feel confident in what they know about science or how they approach learning it. So Kellyanne shared, Lori, that's a great point about how to get people into STEM in the first place. StarNet is here to help. Yeah, I think there's a slight difference between trying to reach people who aren't coming into the library and reaching people who are accessing, um, who are already coming into the library. And what our surveys don't necessarily help you get at is that non-user. Um, However, we do have a lot of libraries that are using our surveys when they're going out to maybe a state fair and having a booth where they're doing some instruction, or they're using our surveys with partners when they're going outside of the library, and they're able to capture non-patron um, responses that way. So you aren't doing a community needs assessment where you're trying to identify that gap. You're still measuring what it is that you offer, but you're able to get maybe at a different subset of the population. Lori shared, StarNet is awesome. I think so too. Brooke shared, it would be cool to see whether there is a correlation between major science events and an uptick in interest in library STEM programming. Yes, and we definitely have some solar eclipse type programming that was measured in our system, so we can see that in the data. So I would say that there was an uptick specifically around that. That would have been the really first big science event that we had since the system went live, so we'll have to continue to keep watching that over time. Corrine shared that your school hosted a small event for the glasses, or for the eclipse, and the library provided info and glasses. Yes, if you're here, it means you probably survived some type of solar eclipse event. Um, so I want to we have about 10 minutes left, and I definitely want to continue to hear any feedback you have. One of the things we're going to do, PLA is going to do with the um, with the feedback we're getting from you today is summarize what we learned from you, who we identify as libraries that have very STEM specific interests, not your only interests, but you are particularly engaged. And uh, we're gonna we're gonna summarize that and we're gonna provide it to the committee that meets at midwinter, and just let them know what we've heard from this particular community. Um, we always want to make sure that we're providing as much support as we can to help you better survey outcomes. And so if the committee has more questions or if they want more specificity in some of the feedback we're getting, we'll probably be reaching back out to Kellyanne and with that information. But we do want to make sure that we're taking this and passing it on to the committee, because one of the most common comments we hear from the community is that besides wanting collections-based outcome measurement tools, we hear pretty regularly that those that have a STEM-specific programming would like to see more STEM-specific outcome-based questions. And so your feedback is definitely really useful for us. And we're happy to continue to take any feedback that you have after today's webinar. Again, we'll share our contact information with you. Kellyanne asked, well, Ernestina shared after the solar eclipse, our patrons asked if there would be anything like this again. That's great. Did the Ernestina, I'm not sure where you're from, but was the library able to offer more activities? That's a great, really basic outcome-based result, wanting more. That's very common when we look at the data across all types of the topics that we measure, that patrons want more, that they love what they've gotten, they really like what they were able to access, and they want more times, more classes, more advanced support. Kellyanne asks, does any of these three resonate with you? Engagement with others versus skills versus use-based outcomes. Certainly, yeah. If any of these you think stand out more, we as outcomes that would be of particular interest to measure, certainly feel free to share that in the chat. Solar viewing available on any sunny day. Yes, that's great, Jeffrey. Brooks said we'll try to schedule another solar eclipse soon. Thanks, Brooks. That's great. There's also International Observe the Moon Night. The moon is visible during the day most of the time. Excellent. Sounds like there are some really great activities out there that you all are thinking about, and certainly great ones that you could be measuring the outcomes of and communicating what you're hearing from the patrons when you're doing that. So I'm going to wrap up with a couple of announcements and then open it up for any other questions that people have. As I promised, we have a webinar coming up on January 31st from 1 to 2 p.m. and this is titled Working with Partners, How to Plan for Collaborative Outcome Measurement. So especially if you have a school that you're looking to partner with on any kind of STEM programming, we'll be talking about different ways, different recommendations we have when you think about setting up a partnership for the first time and how you can do mutual outcome measurement. Next moon eclipse is coming up in 2024. Not an announcement on my slide, but definitely a great announcement to make. If you're interested in learning more about signing up on how to use the tools, definitely access our resources page. We have tutorial videos on how to get started, all the case studies on what libraries are doing across the nation, US and Canada, actually, and then more information about the guidelines if you want to go bigger, broader, longer term. You can access all the information for free on projectoutcome.org. Everything I've covered here is what I've covered so far, but also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and definitely engage in the peer discussion board. So we have just a few minutes left. We've populated that webinar link in the chat box. I'm happy to open it up for any other questions. The webinar is also free. So I encourage you to sign up if you're interested in learning more about the partnership aspect. I'll go ahead and put my contact information in the chat as well. Definitely feel free to reach. out to me if you have any follow-up questions, any remaining comments. One thing I'll say is that we do have a survey that we're going to redirect you to at the end of today's webinar. Please take the time to fill that out. It captures some of the questions that we've asked on today's webinar, and that's what we're also going to be pulling together and providing to the committee at Midwinter. So your feedback definitely helps inform ways that we can improve what we offer to you. So again, we have a few minutes for questions.
And I also just wanted to check in. Thank you so much, Emily. This is Kelly and LeConte, and I just wanted to thank you for joining us today and giving us an overview of Project Outcome. It's just an amazing dashboard and the resources that you've all built to make available to everyone. It's so useful. And as Jeffrey, I think you were saying, like everybody needs help making their case. So thanks again for joining us. And I just wanted to see with everyone on the call today, like we'll have, of course, the survey is so critical for getting your input, and we will have the slides and the archive available. And I just wanted to see, is there anything else in terms of conversation or, maybe some time to ponder these questions that Emily brought to you for your consideration? Is there anything that StarNet can do to help you like think about this? Just wondering, do you need to go try some of the project outcome surveys, see how they work, and then kind of think through how you would be more specific for STEM, or is there, do you need to have further conversation? Just wondering what might help as you're trying to continue to bring STEM to your communities.
And I see we have a handful of attendees who are typing. I'm going to give you a few minutes to type without me, a few seconds to type without me talking, and then I want to make sure I get to Jeffrey's question too. Okay, so Jeffrey asked, Emily, how do you address criticism about how such agree-disagree surveys still don't capture the true value of libraries and informal education to inspire and engage local communities in STEAM? That is a really good question. I think there's a couple of different answers I can give you. First of all, these are convenient surveys, and we are capturing the people who are interested in coming to the library to learn something. So we do see pretty high ratings when we're looking at those Likert scales of disagree to agree. But those open-ended questions where we're asking what did the library do well and how could it improve are really great sources of information where libraries can look more closely at that value proposition that we're talking about. The follow-up surveys actually also help with getting at the value in that you are actually going to the patron and trying to get at more specific information about what they did and didn't do. So that the value proposition around taking action as a result of what they learned can be captured in those follow-up surveys. We don't see those being used as often, primarily because I think because they do take a little bit more time for library staff to work on and collect data from. But that really gets at that adoption rate where you can go out and you can say, of the people who are coming to the library, this is what they're able to do with what they learned. Looks like, Kellyanne, that they'll be, most folks will be in touch after today's webinar. Jeffrey asks, do you have any tips on how to better manage time for evaluation? When I'm giving presentations, I'm so focused on the content, I don't usually have another staff member with me to handle the evaluation. Best tip I have is wrap it up 5 minutes early so that patrons have time, you have time to hand it out, patrons have time to complete the evaluation. We know libraries do a more successful job of evaluating programs if they take the time to print out the surveys a day before, maybe instead of just a few minutes before a program. If you have someone in the class that can volunteer to hand out the surveys, that can definitely help with time, and have an anonymous Dropbox at the end so that you don't have to collect them necessarily. And if other folks have feedback, I see Brooke shared at a different position. I used to hand out evals before my program to make sure I didn't forget. Jeffrey said this is also a personal hang up. As an informal educator, I always feel strange about giving people a test at the end of a program, no matter how valuable I know it is. Yeah, that's some of the trade-offs of evaluation, but you get really good information back from the surveys, and that's what we hear consistently from libraries. So I know we're at the top of the hour. I want to thank you again for joining us on today's webinar, and thank you, StarNet, for hosting. It was really great to meet you all, and I hope to hear from you by email in the future. And please don't forget to fill out our survey.
All right, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and close out the classroom. Thank you all for joining us. You'll be redirected to the survey, and we hope to talk to you soon. Bye.